When, as a car reviewer, I was asked if I wanted to do the UK's first review of the Yo-Yo, I was intrigued but mainly confused. Confused because, look, I loved my Yo-Yo back in the 90s, but are they even back in fashion these days? Aren't kids just playing FIFA and watching conspiracy videos on TikTok? But then I was told that the Yo-Yo is actually a car, and that it goes twice the speed of the Citroen Ami and has twice the range, and it's a tiny little microcar. So then I gave them my address and told them deliver it to me as quick as humanly possible. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the XEV YoYo Pro, and welcome to this exclusive UK first review of this very intriguing car.
Let's cover the basic spec before we go any further, shall we? This is a fully electric car, and in the UK, it's in the L7E category, meaning it's limited to 56 miles per hour. It was designed in Turin, Italy by XEV and is manufactured in Shanghai, China. It weighs just 440 kilos, which is less than half the weight of a Mazda MX-5 Mark I. In terms of power, it has a 15 kilowatt motor, or in old money, that's an adorable 20 horsepower. It has a battery capacity of 10.4 kilowatt hours, giving it around 95 miles of range, and it can be fully charged from 0 to 100% in just over 3 hours on a 7 kilowatt charger. This means the car gives you around 23 miles of range for each £1 you spend on energy, which is 4 times cheaper than a Mazda MX-5. And by the way, I'm just using the Mazda MX-5 as an example of a small 2-seater petrol car. Yes, that's right, the Yo-Yo has just 2 seats and 2 doors. That's rubbish, I hear some of you cry. What if I have a family of 5? Well, we'll come on to that later, but for now, please do settle down. On the inside, the Yo-Yo feels like any modern car. It's got aircon, radio, electric windows and mirrors, a decent 10-inch touchscreen, a luggage capacity of 180 litres, and a funky colour scheme. In terms of safety and security features, it's got ABS, an alarm, central locking and keyless entry, and it comes with a 3-year warranty.
Now, this might not sound like the most advanced set of features in the world, and actually some of it's pretty basic, but it's a lot more than you find in similar cars like the Citroen Ami, and actually the 10-inch touchscreen in here is bigger than the 7-inch touchscreen you find in the Silence SO4, which is a direct rival to the XEV YoYo. Now look, I know what you want me to tell you, I know what it is. You want me to tell you how much this car costs, and I will, right after this short commercial break. No, I'm just kidding. It's £15,990 on the road. And for context, that's about half the price of the new Mini Cooper Electric, which is coincidentally the car that I drove just before this one. So I guess what we need to find out today is this car half as useful as something like the Mini Cooper Electric, or can it justify that £16,000 price tag? To find that out, I've been living with this car for a week, and I think the best place to start is right here in the interior. Now look, it's quite sparse in here, or perhaps the politer phrase would be it's quite minimal. I've got controls for the aircon, I've got controls for the electric windows, and I've got controls for the mirrors. I also have a little latch down to my right to open the charging port at the front of the car. I do actually quite like the design of the interior. It reminds me of like the late 90s and the early noughties, when everything was a bit of a kind of 60s revival. I think you could put a lava lamp in here and stick Austin Powers in the passenger seat, and they'd probably fit right in. The infotainment system, I have to say, is pretty solid. It's easy to use, easy to navigate, and it's quick and responsive, and CarPlay and the Android version of CarPlay link really easily. And once you're in there, then you get a map, you get things like Zap Map so you can find your closest charger. All of that stuff super easy to use, and I'm actually genuinely quite impressed by it. It kind of like gives me the same joyous feeling being in here that I got from the Honda E, which was the best car that nobody ever bought. So I quite like it, but I guess the big question now is, how does it drive? So let's find out. Well, the first thing that jumps out to me about driving the Yo-Yo is just the extremely low level of faff involved, especially with the keyless entry. This car is just super easy to drive. Nip down to the shops, do your grocery run, do your commute, take your child to school if you've got one child, of course, as there's only 2 seats. And those are all things that I would feel fairly guilty doing in a bigger car or an SUV, even if it was electric. Powering up a 2-ton SUV just doesn't really feel like I'm doing much to save the planet if I'm just driving a mile to the shops. I could do that in this car. When I was in Bologna recently in Italy, I saw the Yo-Yo everywhere. So that's a country where you cannot actually drive the Yo-Yo on the motorway because the rules are slightly different. You can drive this on the motorway here, but clearly this car and the L7E category has managed to convince Italians that this is a great choice for the city. And I think really the success or failure of this really relies on whether it can do the same thing in the UK. I think it's time to take this on the motorway and see how it does, which I'm slightly scared of, but let's do a hard cut to how panic-inducing and terrifying that is. No, it's fine, it's fine. I'm going really slowly, but I'm sort of everyone else's problem, and that's fine for me. I wouldn't want to do this for a super long amount of time, but I'm comfortable. The main thing I'm actually worried about is whether the battery range is being sledgehammered by driving at what is basically the top speed of this car. And looking at my predicted range having gone down over the last mile, I would say that yes, that is happening a little bit. Not a crazy amount, but I don't think you would get 80 miles of range or anywhere near that if you were going 50 miles an hour. Maybe it's not an intercity car for, you know, cities that are quite a distance from each other, but I think this is a good car for places like Birmingham and Manchester, Liverpool, Bristol, cities that have lots of dual carriageways that link other parts of the cities together. So this would be a really good city car for those sorts of places, or a good second car for those sorts of places. And actually, something that's really interesting is this car does have swappable battery technology, which becomes a lot easier when the car is a bit smaller like this one. And you know, obviously there's no network yet of places that you can go and swap these batteries, so at the moment it's basically useless. But the distributor for this car in the UK is a motorbike distributor, and actually they have dealerships all over the country. So it's really easy to kind of envisage a not too distant future where they have battery swapping at all of their locations in the UK, and that would make this incredibly useful, because at that point you've got instant doubling of your range. You can do your 90 miles, swap over, and you've got 90 miles again without having to wait. So it's a bit more like going to a petrol station with a petrol car. So it's something to watch out for. And I have to say, I'm coming off the motorway now, but that wasn't as terrifying as I thought it was going to be. Quietly impressed by this little car, I have to say.
I have to say, the Yoyo is a lot of fun, and it seems to inspire joy wherever I go. I've had people ask if they can take photos of it. I had a huge burly scaffolder ask me where he could get one, and it generally just tends to turn heads and raise smiles. In sport mode, it's surprisingly responsive and agile, and you seem to forget that you're driving a little two-seat microcar until you see someone pull out their phone and snap a photo. I think this could grow to be incredibly popular in the UK, and I know the folks who brought the Yoyo to the UK are keen to have Electroheads viewers test drive the car. So if you're interested in this little fella, the car that is, not me, then you can click on the link in the description of this video and request a test drive. If you then go on to buy or lease the car, you'll get some fancy free upgrades worth 350 quid, just because the XEV guys are big fans of Electroheads, which is pretty nice, isn't it?
So let's talk about money. This car is £16,000 on the road, but let's face it, most people aren't buying a car outright these days. They are renting, leasing, or financing a car. So yeah, £16,000 would be quite a bit of money for most people, myself included. Most people are more likely to finance or lease. I don't know the leasing price of this car yet because it's so new in the UK, but we can look at the Hyundai i10 as a very similar on-the-road priced car and use the on-the-road price as a sort of indication of what the lease price will be. And that is £170 a month for the Hyundai i10, and you know, that's not too bad at all, considering that you're just leasing the car. You can give it back at any time. So then you think about the running costs. You got free road tax on this, no road tax whatsoever, and the distributor, which is the company that provided this car for me today, assures me that the insurance premiums are very, very low, and it only costs £1 for every 23 miles that you drive this car to actually charge. So very, very cheap to run. I think all in you could be looking at £200 to £250 a month to run this car completely. If you consider that actually the average cost of running a petrol car in the UK, just running, is £350 a month, that's fuel, that's insurance, and that's road tax, then this is way cheaper. That £350 a month for a petrol car doesn't even include buying the car, and I'm including the leasing cost in the up to £250 a month it will cost to run this. So very, very affordable option in terms of having a city car on the road. So who is this car for then? Well, look, excuse me if this comes across as sounding a bit rude, but I think this is a car for guilty middle class people. And look, I'm not punching down there, I'm not even punching up. You can hear my accent, I'm punching sideways. I'm talking about myself if I had a real job and I had a bit more money. Now, if you own a nice SUV, you're always going to be using that car for longer trips, like going on holiday or visiting your relatives or picking up Xavier from his horse riding lessons. But if you're just nipping to the local boulangerie for a fresh sourdough, or I don't know, dropping Gertrude off at prep school, or even picking up a nice bottle of that Vino Verde from Majestic that you tried in Madeira when you went sailing last summer, then you shouldn't be driving an SUV, should you? Should you? No, you should be driving something like this. And look, at £16,000, I think it probably is a good second car option for people that aren't so worried about their household income level, let's just say. Look, in the past, I think L7E options have maybe been a bit too funky and a bit too weird, but actually I think the Yoyo is styled wonderfully. It's really joyous and playful, and I think that's what I want in a city car. Earlier on I compared it to the Mini Cooper E, and yes, the Mini Cooper E has a lot more range, but do you really need 200 miles of range in a city car? Actually, at the kind of 150 to 200 mile range that the Mini Cooper is in, probably not enough to be a first car. So as purely a second car city option, I think this is the sort of right light touch approach that we need in our cities. So the L7E category is convincing me. Got to convince a lot of other people. I guess the really big drawback against the Mini Cooper is that this only has 2 seats, so you can't take 2 kids to school. But that's actually not my problem, it's yours, because I don't have any kids. So moving on. So what are my final thoughts on this cheeky little chappy? I have to say I was skeptical at first. I thought it occupied an unnecessary space between the Citroen Ami and the Mini Cooper and cars like that, but I actually think it's a really useful space. It's a useful car that's fun and joyous to drive, and it actually makes me want to drive in the city, which can't be said for many other cars. And I really don't enjoy city driving, especially in London, but it's rained a lot in the last week, and this has been really useful. Trips that I would do on my bike and get absolutely drenched on, or that I might have to walk to the tube and get drenched to do, I can just do in this, and that's been an absolute godsend. Let's face it, it's not to everyone's taste. I can certainly already see a certain cross-section of people in the comments who won't like it. I can visualize them now. They're men. They're going to be saying things like, it's really small, if you crash you're going to die, I don't like it, it's not big enough, I don't feel like enough of a man when I drive it. But really, that's their problem and not yours. I think this is the sort of car that, look, if you know this is what you're after, if you know it suits your needs, then great. What's left? All of the things that I'm contractually obliged to say, like please like me. No, please like the video, comment. If you've got any questions, more than happy to answer them. Subscribe to the channel. If you're still watching at this point and you haven't subscribed, then please do. Please subscribe. Please? She's not going to subscribe, but you can. Thanks so much for watching this video. Take care and have a great day. Thank you.